The dusty saloon fell silent as the stranger pushed through the swinging doors, his spurs jingling with each measured step. He was tall, weathered by years under the unforgiving sun, with eyes that had seen both kindness and cruelty in equal measure. The cowboys lounging around the bar turned to size him up, their laughter dying on their lips as they took in his worn leather vest, the Colt revolver sitting easy on his hip, and the quiet confidence that radiated from him like heat from desert stones. Jake Morrison, the loudest and most arrogant of the local ranch hands, was the first to break the silence. He'd had too much whiskey and too little sense, a dangerous combination that had gotten him into trouble more times than anyone could count. "Well, well," he drawled, nudging his companions with his elbow. "Look what the wind blew in. Another drifter looking for work, I reckon." The stranger said nothing, just walked to the bar and ordered a whiskey in a voice that was surprisingly soft for a man of his size. The bartender, old Tom Henderson, poured the drink with shaking hands. He'd been tending bar for 30 years and had learned to recognize the kind of man who carried stillness like a weapon. Jake wasn't nearly as perceptive. Emboldened by his friend's snickering, he sauntered over to the stranger, his thumbs hooked in his belt loops. "You know what your problem is, friend? You look like you need some fun in your life. You need a woman." He gestured broadly toward the stairs where several saloon girls stood watching the scene unfold. They were painted and perfumed, their dresses cut low and their smiles practiced. The stranger took a slow sip of his whiskey, his eyes never leaving his glass. "I'm serious," Jake continued, warming to his subject. The other cowboys had gathered around now, forming a loose circle. "Pick any girl you want. We'll even pay for your first hour. Consider it a welcome to town." His words were generous, but his tone was mocking, designed to humiliate. The stranger finally turned to look at Jake, and something in his gaze made the younger man take an involuntary step backward. "That's mighty kind of you," the stranger said quietly. Jake recovered quickly, mistaking the stranger's courtesy for weakness. "So go on then. Pick one. Unless you're too shy." The cowboys erupted in laughter, slapping their thighs and elbowing each other. The stranger set down his glass with deliberate care. His eyes swept the room, past the saloon girls on the stairs with their feathers and face paint, past the women serving drinks with tired smiles, until they landed on a figure in the corner that everyone else seemed determined to ignore. She was sitting alone at a small table near the kitchen door, her head bent over a ledger book, a pencil tucked behind her ear. She wore a simple blue dress that had been mended more than once, and her hair was pulled back in a practical bun. She was a large woman, tall and broad-shouldered, with strong hands and an even stronger presence that she tried desperately to minimize by making herself as small and invisible as possible. Her name was Clara Hansen, and she kept the books for the saloon, managed the supplies, settled disputes, and generally kept the place running while everyone else got drunk or carried on. She'd worked there for 3 years, ever since her father died and left her with nothing but debts and a reputation for being too big, too plain, too smart, and too proud for any man to want. "Her," the stranger said, pointing directly at Clara. "The one in the corner. I pick her." The saloon exploded in laughter so loud that Clara looked up from her ledger, confusion crossing her broad, honest face. Jake was nearly doubled over, tears streaming down his cheeks. "The cow," he managed to gasp between guffaws. "You want the cow?" The stranger's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "I want to take Miss Clara to dinner. A proper dinner, at the hotel restaurant." He pulled out a roll of bills from his vest pocket and laid them on the bar. "That should cover the meal and her wages for the evening." The laughter died away, replaced by confused muttering. Clara had gone pale, then red, then pale again. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the wooden floor. "This is some kind of joke," she said, her voice shaking with barely controlled emotion. "I don't know what game you're playing, mister, but I'm not interested in being part of it." The stranger turned to face her fully, and for the first time that evening, something like warmth entered his eyes. "No game, ma'am. I've been riding for 3 weeks straight, sleeping on hard ground and eating nothing but jerky and hardtack. I'd be honored to share a real meal with someone who looks like they might have an interesting conversation in them." He paused, then added quietly, "Unlike some folks in this room." Clara stared at him, searching his face for signs of mockery or cruelty. She'd been the butt of too many jokes to trust easily. But there was something in his eyes, something genuine and almost sad, that made her hesitate. "Why me?" she asked bluntly. "Of all the women here, why me?" The stranger picked up his whiskey glass and finished it in one swallow. "Because you're the only one in this whole damn place who's been treated with less respect than I have since I walked through that door. And because you were working while everyone else was playing. That tells me something about your character." Jake, sensing that the joke had somehow gotten away from him, tried to reassert control. "Come on now, Clara. Don't get any ideas. He's just trying to be funny. You know you're not the kind of woman a man like that would really." "Shut your mouth," the stranger said, and though he didn't raise his voice, the command in it was unmistakable. "You've said enough." He turned back to Clara. "The choice is yours, ma'am. But I'm asking genuine. No tricks, no games. Just dinner and conversation with someone I'd like to get to know better." Clara looked around the saloon at all the faces watching her. Some were amused, some were confused, and a few of the women looked almost jealous. She thought about all the years she'd spent making herself invisible, accepting that she'd never be chosen, never be wanted, never be anything but the big girl they kept in the back room to do the real work. Something shifted inside her, some long-dormant spark of defiance and hope. "All right," she said, lifting her chin. "Give me 10 minutes to change." The cowboy nodded. "Take all the time you need. I'll be waiting right here." As Clara disappeared up the back stairs to her small room, the silence in the saloon was profound. Jake opened his mouth to say something, but the look the stranger gave him made him think better of it. The cowboys drifted back to their card games and drinks, muttering among themselves. Tom the bartender leaned across the bar. "That was either the kindest or the dumbest thing I've seen in 30 years, he said quietly. "You know the whole town is going to be talking about this by morning." The stranger shrugged. "Let them talk. I've been called worse things than kind or dumb." When Clara came back down, she changed into her only good dress, a deep green that brought out the color of her eyes. She'd let her hair down, and it fell in thick waves around her shoulders. She was still a large woman, but she stood straighter now, her head held high, and there was a beauty in her strength that the stranger had recognized from across the room. He offered her his arm like she was a fine lady, not a saloon bookkeeper. "Shall we, Miss Clara?" They walked out of the saloon together into the golden evening light, leaving behind a room full of people who would never quite forget the night a stranger rode into town and chose the woman everyone else had overlooked. At dinner, they talked for hours. She learned that his name was Daniel, that he'd been a scout for the army, that he'd lost his wife and child to fever 5 years ago and had been drifting ever since, looking for a reason to stop moving. He learned that she'd taught herself to read and figure, that she had dreams of opening her own shop someday, that she loved poetry and hated whiskey and had a laugh that could light up a room when she let it loose. By the time they finished their meal, something had changed between them. A connection had been made, fragile but real, built on mutual respect and recognition of each other's worth. "Thank you," Clara said as he walked her back toward the saloon. "For seeing me. For choosing me. Even if nothing comes of this, you gave me something precious tonight." Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her. "What if I don't want nothing to come of it? What if I'd like to see you again tomorrow? And the day after that?" Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Don't say things you don't mean." "I never do," he replied simply. And when he kissed her hand in parting, it felt like a promise.